Hello and happy Monday. This is your reading lesson. Today we're actually going to start talking about text structures, which are for informational text. A text structure is something that is used in nonfiction informational writing. It is just basically how did the author organize the information that they present to you? How do they put it together? So, if you understand the text structure of the author's writing, you're going to be able to understand the purpose for the writing. So, here's some examples. If an author wants to show you how alligators and crocodiles are similar or different, they're going to use a compare and contrast structure. That means that when they're writing, they're going to explain ways that crocodiles and alligators are the same and ways that they're different. Okay? But if, for example, an author wants to help you understand why a natural disaster happens and then what happens after. So let's talk about like an earthquake. So they may explain to you the cause of the earthquake and then explain the effects of the earthquake, like what happens after the earthquake happens, like the damage. That would be a cause and effect structure. And we'll get into more of these as we go throughout the week. So it's understanding the information about how it's organized helps you understand what you're reading. If you know the author is trying to help you understand how that alligators and crocodiles are alike by using compare and contrast language, then you know that that's what they're trying to show you. So here's our first text structure that we're going to work on today, which is actually compare and contrast. So if you're not sure what the text structure is of something you're reading, you just want to ask yourself some questions. So one question you might ask yourself is this piece of writing or this text telling me how things are alike or how they're different? If that's what they're explaining to you, then you know that that structure is compare and contrast. Now, an author might use signal words to help you know that it's compare and contrast, but they may not always use signal words. But you have to pay attention to the ideas and the information that they're actually giving you. Okay, so here's some compare and contrast signal words that you might see in a piece of writing or a text. So for contrast, you might see different from, however, although, or on the other hand. For you also might see on this green side as opposed to, more than, less than, or on the contrary. For comparing, so how that they're alike, you might see similar to, alike, same as, not only, but also, resemble, as well as, and both. Now, these are not the only signal words or phrases you might see. These are just some examples of compare and contrast language that you might see in a piece of text if an author is trying to show you how something is alike and how something is different. So let's look at this first example here. And what I'm actually going to do is, as I'm reading, I'm going to be highlighting some compare and contrast signal words because I do know this is a compare and contrast text, but I want to show you how the author is organizing it so you understand that. Soccer and football are alike in a few ways. So as you see here, alike in a few ways. That is definitely a compare and contrast phrase, but have many differences. That's another phrase that shows you the author is trying to show you how soccer and football are alike and how they're different. One similarity is that there are 11 players on the field at one time in both soccer and football. So you see how they say soccer and football? Both soccer and football? That's another way that you can see that they're trying to show you how that those things are alike. They are both popular sports in the United States, and they both require the use of a ball and field. So as you can see up here, they were telling us the ways that soccer and football are the same. So that means that down here, they're going to tell us how they're different. The differences between soccer and football are numerous. Again, we've got that signal phrase there, the differences between soccer and football. So that's another clue that the author is using a structure of compare and contrast because they're trying to explain to me how they're the same and how they're different. Soccer players use a ball shaped like a sphere, whereas football players use a ball that has two ends. So I know this is not a typical signal word that you might see or phrase, but do you see where it says whereas? When you see something like that, the author is trying to show you how the things are different. So soccer, ball shaped like a sphere, whereas football players use a ball that has two ends. That is showing a clear difference. In soccer, players try to send the ball to the goal. However, in football, players are trying to get the ball to the end zone through the goal posts. So again, we've got some definite differences here. Where it says, however, okay, that's a signal. So here they told me what the goal is for soccer, and here they're telling me the goal for football and showing me that they're actually different, okay? The rules are also different, okay? Another signal for me. In soccer, players are rarely allowed to touch the ball with their hands, while football players frequently touch the ball. So that's another way that they're explaining to me. They're saying, well, in soccer, it's no hands, but in football, you use your hands. Football players are allowed to tackle, but this is forbidden in soccer. Now, this is not a clear signal here. However, I want to show you how they're using two different ideas. So it says football players are allowed to tackle. This is forbidden in soccer. So even though there wasn't like a signal word like alike or different, they presented two different ideas about football and soccer, and that lets me know that they're showing me the similarities and differences. So this is a clear example of how that an author is using a compare and contrast text structure, okay? The author is not going to come out and say, I'm using compare and contrast text structure. They don't do that. They expect you to figure it out by looking for the language and the thing and the ideas that they're trying to get you to understand. Here, the purpose of this text was to show you the differences and similarities between soccer and football. They were not trying to show you how to play soccer or how to play football. So you have to think about the big purpose, the big picture. The big purpose of this writing was to show you how they were alike and similar, or how they were similar and different. So that shows you it's clearly a compare and contrast text structure because the author wanted to show you similarities and differences. And here is just a Venn diagram. Now, the Venn diagram is important because if another way that you can tell that you are reading compare and contrast text is if you could put that information in a Venn diagram, it's probably comparing and contrasting. Okay? So if I can take the information presented in the text and put it in a Venn diagram to compare and contrast, they're probably using a compare and contrast text structure. So you are going to be doing something similar to this, and what you're going to be doing is a Jamboard. And again, these texts are obviously compare and contrast because it's the only one I've presented to you so far. As you read the text, you're going to use the highlighter to circle or underline clues that show it's written using compare and contrast structure. So use your highlighter tool, and as you're reading, find clues that show you it's comparing and contrasting. Okay? And then you have one here that is more of a question about how that tents and cabins are different. So that's another example of how you can use compare and contrast structure to answer those kinds of questions. I hope that helps and good luck.